What's going on, guys and girls? Welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to make a video really dedicated to the people who are looking to work for the railroad, since the railroad's been hiring so much. A lot of us, or I should say a lot of people know when they're kids that they want to work for the railroad. Then there's some people who, just kind of like myself, just decided they wanted to do it one day because it's like a fun job, like a cool job. There's always that hype about the railroad pays well. 5 things I think that most people need to consider before applying for the railroad and actually following through with it and taking that leap of faith and quitting your job and jumping and going to school and training and doing all that good stuff. And we're just going to go ahead and get straight to it. So I got a list on my phone, so I apologize here. And I'm going to start at number 5 and work my way to number 1. If you've been on this channel for any amount of time, you probably know what number 1 is. But number 5 I put is working on call. So working on call for the railroad is a lot different than any other job that I know of when you work on call. A lot of people work, Monday through Friday or some kind of other days during the week, and then you're on call for 2 days, or maybe you're on call that night. Like if you're working in the HVAC business, you go to work, but then you're on call at night to do emergency runs if someone's heating and air went out or something like that. Working on call for the railroad is different. You're on call 24/7. When you're new, you have no idea when you're going to work. Most of the time you're probably going to get called at 11 p.m., 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, who knows. Sometimes you'll get lucky and catch a day job when you get called at 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. Most times you're going to be called late at night, early in the morning, on the rails out there when it's dark and you're trying to stay awake. So that is a different monster. There is no set schedule until you get seniority and you get a hold of local, or get on a pull turn where you kind of have an idea of when you might be leaving. Once you start working and you start to understand the board and how to read it and how to see your plan trains, you kind of can get an idea when you're on the extra board, but that definitely takes time. Working around and learning mainframe is a task in itself, which is the way outdated model where they run trains and have a list of the conductors that are available to be called. But working on call for the railroad is completely different than anything that I've ever done before. And it's not for everybody, and that is completely okay, but you need to be aware that you are on call 24/7 whenever you are on the board marked up available to work. Number 4, which is kind of goes without saying, if you're applying for the railroad, you probably already know this, but it's going to be working in the elements. I wish it was always sunny and 75 when you work for the railroad, but unfortunately it's not. It seems like most times it's either raining or freezing cold, or if you're down here in the south, it's 9,000 degrees. Very rarely do you ever get to work, it seems like, when it's actually sunny and 75. You're normally at home asleep, and then you get called that night whenever the rain or something comes in. But yeah, you're going to work in the elements. If you're up north, you're going to work in the snow and the cold and the rain. If you're down south, you're going to work in the heat and the rain, hurricanes, pop-up thunderstorms. That's why it's always crucial to have a rain suit in your bag at all times and a change of clothes, no matter if you're running a local or going on the road. Rain suits are very important. Change of socks, all that good stuff. You're going to need it. But working in the elements, you're going to be in it. There's no way around it. You just can't quit working because it's raining. Now, if it's lightning, it's a different story. Tornado warning, different story. If you think something is unsafe to work, if it's pouring down so bad that you think it's unsafe, then at times you can stop. But you also have to justify that with your train master if they ever ask you questions. So you will be out in the elements, and all elements, no matter really what part you're from, because sometimes we even get snow down here. And that's just the nature of the beast. Number 3 I put is long hours. The reason being is a lot of the people that I talk to they're in the they're coming from like the blue collar world, so to speak. They're out in the elements already working in the heat, working with their hands, doing manual labor, stuff like that. And those 8 to 10 hour days can add up, and that's a long day. 8 to 10 hours. That's what I work now. I work 10 hours, and it's long. It seems like on the railroad you're going to work 12 or longer. Sometimes the railroad's so much different than just anything I've ever worked before. If you get on a train, you can be on that train. You can legally work for 12 hours. But that doesn't mean after 12 hours you're going to jump off the train and go hit the time clock and go home. You can be stuck. So there is a law that allows railroad workers to, kind of like a truck driver, Railroad workers are allowed to work up to 12 hours. Once they hit the 12-hour mark, the train must stop and come to a complete stop, and they have to sit and wait for another crew to come on duty and take place of you and the engineer, and then y'all will swap. You'll get in the van, and then you will go home. Sometimes this takes 30 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour. Sometimes the dispatchers plan ahead and go ahead and get you a crew en route. Sometimes you don't have conductors and engineers rested. If that's the case, then they'll probably have you tie your train down and send a van. But there is times where you're going to be out there 14, 15, 16 hours sometimes. That's not uncommon from a lot of people I've been talking to. It wasn't uncommon to work 12. It seemed like every time I went on duty, I was working 12 unless I was going to Meridian or Memphis. If I was going to Chattanooga, it was going to be 12. If I was working in the yard or working, and we call it dog catching, which is just going and getting the trains that never made it into the yard, going and getting them and bringing them into the yard, I was working 12. And it makes for super long nights, and you mix that with being on call, working in the elements, and then you got long hours on top of that. So that's why we always say prepare, bring clothes, bring extra food with you, because then like up north when it's snowing and nobody can drive around and get to you, you may be out there for a really long time. There's no telling, you know, sometimes you can send a train, if no one can get to you, if a train comes by you on the main line, sometimes they'll tell you to go ahead and jump on that train with them, and then they'll bring you into the yard. But then again, sometimes they may not be able to get to you, so it's something to think about. Is that common? No, not that I've ever heard. Could it happen? Yes, it could, and it's better be prepared now than be sorry later. Number 2 is furloughs. Furloughs is one of those things that happens in the rail industry. For anybody listening, this furlough is just being laid off. It's just something that the carriers do. The last big one that we had was in 2019, 2020. That's when the carriers laid off like over 20-something%, 30% of their workforce as far as conductors. They were expecting the pandemic to kind of shut the economy down, but in fact it did the exact opposite. Everybody was stuck at home and the economy boomed. And then they were short conductors, and they didn't have anybody. None of the carriers had anybody. And they've hired. The STB, which is Surface Transportation Board, and the FRA, Federal Railroad Administration, has kind of forced these carriers to not allow this to happen again, because the railroads, whether the media wants to say it or not, the railroads is one of the main reasons why we had the shortages and stuff. We didn't have people to move trains. Just why you had all these ships sitting off the West Coast out in California, we didn't have nobody to move trains. We had truck drivers, but truck drivers can only move so much, whereas a train, you can move a lot more than one single truck can move. That furloughs is something you need to think about, because I always tell new people on the channel when they're getting into the industry, prepare to be furloughed at least once within the first 1 to probably 3 years. Typically, furloughs don't last long. The one that lasted this past time, 2019, lasted a long time. I was furloughed for over a year, but that's not common. But I would fully expect and prepare yourself accordingly to be furloughed for at least 3 to 6 months. Of course, save your money and stuff like that, or just have a backup plan, cut grass, whatever you got to do. But be prepared. I can't tell you that you're going to be furloughed if you do get hired. Some people don't get furloughed. But the possibility's out there. If the economy starts to tank a little bit and the railroad sees it's fit, they're not going to keep paying guarantee to conductors for sitting at home. And some of you are probably saying, what is guarantee? There's a guarantee pay for the railroad because you work on call, that nature. Sometimes they call you, sometimes they don't. So the unions and the carriers come to an agreement where they will pay you X amount of dollars every week, regardless if you're called or not, as long as you stay marked up, which is available to be called into work. If you mark off sick, it kind of throws that out the window. But prepare accordingly if you get into this industry. Like I said, you may hire in, you may never be furloughed. There's plenty of guys that can attest to that. They've never been furloughed in their career. But there is also a lot of guys out there that have been furloughed at least once, sometimes more. Back in like 08, 09, when things really got bad, several guys got furloughed several times. But that was, it's kind of I know things are kind of similar now as far as the housing market and stuff like that, but it's definitely something to consider before jumping into the rail industry. And the number one and the most important thing I believe you should consider when you're working for the railroad, and that's going to be time away from home. If you have kids, if you have a family, um, be prepared to be away from your family a lot. Um, a typical week, whenever things are really busy and you're out there bumping and making money and working, you're going to get marked up. You're going to be sitting at home. You're going to get a phone call, say 6 o'clock in the morning. Be at work at 7:30 a.m. Get to work at 7:30 a.m. You're going to be on the train for 12 hours. You're going to get to your away from home terminal, which could be whatever, Chattanooga, Meridian, Mississippi, wherever you're going. You're going to get off there, go to your hotel. You're going to sit in your hotel for at least 10. You have 10 hours of undisturbed rest. You'll be there for at least 10 hours. But sometimes, depending on the terminal you're going to, you can be there 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 30 hours. You never really know. And typical week is going to be 12 hours on a train away from home terminal, 10, 12, I'd say at least 12 to 16 hours that you're away from home terminal, 12 hours on the train back home. When you get home, you can be at home for 10 hours. They can call you right back. I've had that happen. Sometimes you may sit at home for 14, 16, 18 hours. Sometimes you might be home for several days. It really depends on the economy and how things are moving. The saying about the railroad is it's feast or famine, which is completely true. At the peak of my not doing anything as a conductor for Norfolk Southern, I was making like 2 trips a week. So I would leave and go to Meridian, be gone for like, it was normally like 6 hours to Meridian, 8 hours to Meridian. We'd be in a hotel for 10, maybe 12 hours, and then back home 6 hours later. Once I got home, I'd be at home for like 3 or 4 days. I get called back out again. And, they were paying me guarantee, and they paid me guarantee for 6 months, and then they furloughed me. So that's you're going to be gone a lot. There's going to be times you're going to be at home a lot. But you're going to be going away from your family, and it's something you need to consider, especially if you have little ones. But also there's that fine line there between, sacrificing your time to have a future for your family and provide to your family. So I understand all that, and I've been there. My daughter was 1.5 years old when I hired in. She's 7 now, and I did what I had to do. I don't regret it. It has led us to where we are now with a house and everything else, and this YouTube channel. So it's just something you need to consider. Talk it over with your spouse, with your partner, because I promise you, it takes a saying, it takes a village. It takes a strong partner or spouse to deal with someone who works for the railroad. That's why the divorce rate is so high for railroad workers. So again, number 5 is going to be working on call, which is completely different than anything else I've ever worked. Working in the elements, of course, which kind of be expected. Long hours, 12 hours, pretty much might as well say 12 hours minimum. Furloughs, which you could get furloughed within the first 1 to 3 years, I would say. But then again, you may never get furloughed. And then, of course, time away from home. Things you need to think about is all this is. These are just my things. It's just from my opinion. I'm sure a lot of guys on the channel can express their opinions down below, and I encourage you to. What do you think new people should think about before working for the railroad? There's a lot of other things I could talk about, but I'm not. I'm going to allow the guys and the girls in the community here to kind of shed their opinion on this, and we're going to go from there. But thank you guys for being here. Sorry I haven't been too active. I'm about to start. I need to change it. I need to. Tournament season's picking back up. I've got videos, all kinds of videos I need to make. I sit at work, and I have notes for days about videos I need to make. I just got to make them. Other than that, I posted Travis's GoFundMe page. I'll have it pinned and linked below. That is the CSX conductor that was killed. The GoFundMe was set up, I believe, by their local chairman or general chairman, and the beneficiary is Travis's wife. So if you want to donate there, you can, to help them out any way they can. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. It's a tragic situation, and the carriers and our trainers, they need to do better. And also, I was going to speak to myself there. I could do better. I can do better with videos and trying to help prepare the new guys and girls coming in. So other than that, y'all be good. Let me know if I can help you out in any way. railroadtalk@gmail, Facebook, Instagram. I don't really go on Instagram too much. Yeah, Facebook's probably the quickest way and easiest way to contact me if you have a question. Other than that, y'all be good. I'll see you guys in another video. Bye.